Hello and welcome back to another episode of Nick Tiffany's Movie Reviews in the podcast form. It's an exciting day and an exciting episode because this is going to be our first review of a 2023 film. Launching into this new movie season with a little more time, most of all, and a lot more enthusiasm in terms of trying to see more movies, talk about movies more, and really just kind of get back into why I started doing all this in the first place and why I enjoyed it so much. And I think it's pretty fitting that we're going to start off stellar with a movie like Air, directed by Ben Affleck. Air is the story of how Nike courted Michael Jordan out of college and turned a rookie into the poster of the NBA with a signature shoe, the Air Jordan. It is always so enjoyable to watch when Ben Affleck directs. It's always enjoyable to watch when he acts as well, which he does in this film. He plays none other than Nike CEO Phil Knight. But Ben Affleck, as a director, just feels so assured of himself in his tone, in the story he's telling, in the energy of that story. And Air really surprised me. Just number one, by how funny and how emotional part of the story is. I think they do a really fantastic job of not making this a movie about business, but about emotion and personality and family, and base it on, I think, what actually really matters in life, in the grand scheme. So immediately, Affleck's direction and the way the story is told is felt on a totally different level, and one that makes sense to tell in a theatrical experience. But I also think that, this is just a fantastic story for so many reasons, because the Air Jordan shoe outperformed, outsold everything, and pretty much has since it came out. Nike, we're on Air Jordan 33s or 35s now. I can't quite remember, because for a good 3 or 4 years, I really got invested in collecting Jordans, wearing tons of different unique pairs, trading with people, looking at other people's incredible collections. There's some really amazing boutique shops around the Seattle area. You got Soulmates, Lucky Dog, the Mecca. I mean, there's, this whole sneaker community that is built around these shoes, which just have a global presence, because they're attached to, quite honestly, the greatest athlete we've ever witnessed, Michael Jordan. So there was already definitely a really cool draw to me for this story, just because I really enjoy the shoes. And on that note, I have to thank Aaron White over at the Feelin' Film podcast. He invited me to this screening for the Air movie. He knows I'm a huge fan of shoes, a huge fan of Jordan. So he, personally, he was like, hey, I know you're really interested. I know you have a whole interest in the shoes alone. And so what a cool story that would be to learn. So just a huge, huge shout out and thank you to him, just for the thought, number one, but also because this was my first film critic screening since 2017, like early 2017, maybe even late 2016. And so to kind of get back in that environment again, to see and converse with some of the people who I hadn't seen in years, whose work I still read and am inspired by, to see some of the, some of the regular characters back in action and just being there, talking film, talking shop. It was the refresh that I needed, I feel like, to get back into doing this and doing it more consistently, and not just watching the movies, but actually buckling in and talking about them. And so it was just an awesome time. It was such a great movie to experience in the theater. Amazon produced Air, actually. And it will be streaming on Amazon Prime at some point in the near future. But I think they're going to be smart, and they're going to see that this film has legs, and they're going to let this run in the theaters as long as it can before they move it over to streaming. And I'd absolutely recommend that you go see this with a nice packed theater. It played so well, so many jokes, so many great emotional beats. It was just a great feeling being back in an audience, being back in a full crowd. So again, just thank you to Aaron again. He does incredible podcast work and writing. He talks everything from movies to games to sports. So it was awesome just getting to know him more and, be back in that environment that I love. And this was a movie that I loved. It was just so much fun. And it was just handled so well. Matt Damon plays Sonny Vaccaro, who's Nike's, they joke. They're like, what actually do you do here? Well, what Sonny does is he watches a lot of game footage. He watches a lot of tape, high school, college. He travels all around the country looking at prospects. And part of his job for Nike is finding an athlete to sign who is really going to jumpstart their presence in the world of the NBA and basketball. Nike, by no means, is a small company in this movie. This isn't totally like an underdog. Nike was hurting. They definitely needed Jordan. But, they were number one in running shoes in the world and completely changed what running shoes and tennis shoes were. But finding a foothold in the world of basketball was growing as the NBA just continued to grow. And so what Sonny would do, he'd host tournaments that would then turn into a, countrywide string of events, where you've got high schoolers playing, you've got college coaches looking for prospects, and the talent pool starting early, looking at players who can develop and seeing potential in that. More than anything, Sonny is a believer. He just, there's something he sees, like I'm sure so many people saw, in Michael Jordan's confidence as a player, as a teammate, as a rookie. Nike wanted to, they didn't have a lot of money to spend, or were not giving him a lot of money to spend on courting athletes. They were looking at Barkley, they were looking at Stockton, they were looking at some other guys lower in the draft as well. Jordan, I think, was third in the draft, and the top two picks had already been signed to Adidas or Converse, who were the two reigning shoe designers at the time as far as the basketball lines went. When the likes of Larry Bird and Magic Johnson are wearing your shoes, how do you not want to follow that? Or how do you not want to follow Adidas and the three stripes and all those funky pantsuits and track suits and all the colors? They do a great job kind of highlighting, though, what that culture and what that expression kind of means to a college kid or to young people or to all people, truly. And the way this story goes is, Michael Jordan, he didn't want a meeting with Nike. He was like, no, it's going to be Converse. And if it's not Converse, it's going to be Adidas because they got the tracksuits. I'm not even taking a meeting with Nike. Respectfully, no, we're not interested. There's nothing that you could do to convince me otherwise. Chris Messina plays David Falk, Michael Jordan's agent, and he and Matt Damon go back and forth hysterically. I mean, some of it is super foul, and it earns that R rating. But, and it's only just little moments here and there. But that sports talk, agent talk, all the BS, it cracked me up. It felt so real and genuine, though, too. But he wasn't interested in Nike, And, what this movie really did for me, too, which was a huge draw, Chris Tucker, who's not a retired actor or comedian, but just doesn't do a lot of projects. Chris Tucker was in this movie. He is absolutely one of my favorite people ever as a storyteller, as an actor, comedian, you name it. The dude is just a magnetic personality who just brings such a great energy to anything he does. So he plays Howard White, who's also a part of the Nike shoe team there, and the the basketball team. And, his advice when it came to signing was, hey, forget all the extra BS. I went to the mother, especially when it's a black mother. He says, the family, but the mama, she is the most important. And the really cool thing I read about this film when Ben Affleck approached Michael Jordan was he was talking to him. He asked him, who would you like if there's an actress? Who would you like to play your mother? And Michael Jordan only had one answer. He said Viola Davis would play my mother Dolores. And it was cool because Ben and Viola, they've done a couple movies together. But, he was kind of nervous. He's like, all right, if I don't get Viola, this movie isn't getting made. Like, I told Michael it could be her. So I got to get it done. And, fortunately, she really enjoyed what the script was and kind of what the story was and how it was told. And, rather than going after Michael with this shiny car, with these promises, you're going to be the greats, Sonny took a chance and he did something a little risque. He went to the family, kind of going around the agent. Not illegal, but definitely frowned upon. And, he goes out to North Carolina because he believes in Michael so much. Not only does he want to make Michael Jordan a star, give him his own line, all these different things. He wants the best deal for Michael and people who care about him and care to collaborate with him and make him their focus because just like his mom, Sonny believes this kid's going to be something special, something we haven't seen before, and he's worth it. And so much of this film is just about taking a chance and really believing in something, but doing it for the right reasons, though. Greed aside, one of the coolest things about this story and the deal, because obviously going into this, Michael Jordan makes Air Jordans. He gets the deal done. But what was unprecedented at the time was working with an athlete or a superstar and giving them royalties, giving them a percentage of each shoe sold. That kind of thing was unheard of. And still today, whether it's the LeBron, shut up and dribble because, you can't be talking politics. You play basketball. That's all you can do, He's the biggest draw for the NBA. Anything he does, anything he touches, people are gravitated towards. It was not quite like Michael Jordan, I would say. Because, you were Team Michael over here, just in the long run. All respect to LeBron James. He's an incredible player. But, nobody was going to give an athlete percentages like that. That just seemed ludicrous to businessmen at the time. It seemed antithetical to them. They're like, no, you already get your chunk, and then we're going to make our money because we're promoting you. That's, we are giving you the attention. And with Michael Jordan, the reality is that so few saw, perhaps, other than Sonny, was no. In the end, he's going to promote you. You will thrive off of him. And that approach to both Michael's family, to Michael, to his mother, to Phil Knight, just understanding that, hey, he is someone who is worth the money. He is worth the investment. He is worth the time to collaborate and create something unique. In a time where the league wouldn't let you have more than 50% of your shoe that's white, or it has to be 50% white, and there's all these rules and regulations. A company that's willing to incur fines on his behalf to let him flourish and to create a shoe that feels like him, like what he's going to inspire. This story was told so well. Jason Bateman plays Rob Strasser, who kind of works as a marketing executive, kind of alongside Sonny in that basketball division at Nike. And usually we're so used to Jason Bateman's deadpan and dry humor, which is still present. But I was so pleasantly surprised by the emotional vulnerability that we kind of saw from his character in this movie. We don't really, outside of Ozarks or TV shows, like, I don't know, in film, I feel like, he's kind of pigeonholed sometimes and often ends up playing a very similar character across multiple different projects. But this is one where he had more than a few moments where he kind of opens up about where his character is in his life. It's great to take a risk, and we should. But, sometimes you have to understand that a lot of people are going to be affected by this, win or lose, And obviously they know that going in. If you take the risk, it going in. But, you have to think of more than just yourself. You have to think of the other people around you. You've got to remember who you've got with you. Whether it's your real family, your adopted family, your friends who are family, there's just a really great emphasis in this film, I think, on remembering those people, caring for those people, keeping those connections, and listening to the advice, the good and the bad, from those people as well. It's great seeing Matt and Ben acting together again. You can tell that these guys are brothers and best friends, and it's really fun for them, I'm sure, to call each other assholes and to give each other shit in this movie like their characters do. It just feels so natural. It's just so enjoyable to watch. You throw Chris Tucker in the mix there. It's just, this movie was so much funnier than I was anticipating it to be. And it really does just work on so many levels. Much like the writer, Alex Convery, and how he was kind of inspired by the Last Dance documentary about Michael Jordan. Watching this, it made me just want to go back and watch that documentary again and just watch how incredible and how dominant Michael Jordan really was. And it was cool. The writer, he got his script picked up off the Blacklist, which is kind of a place where screenwriters, different people can go and submit scripts to be read by producers, to be edited, to be kind of critiqued in different ways. So it's cool that got picked up. And, to this day, you look at Nike and what they're doing with a lot of their celebrity endorsements of their celebrity brands. The biggest person since Jordan for them, undoubtedly, is Travis Scott. Travis Scott overhauled the Jordan line. Before that, I'm like, he was just growing so popular. His music just growing so popular at the time. It's kind of astounding to me in a way. Any shoe that this man wore, whether it was a Jordan, whether it was a Dunk, didn't matter if it was 10 years old, 15 years old, everything this man wore, every shoe this man wore, immediately shot up in value on all the resale sites. Everyone was trying to find it. Everyone was trying to buy it. And every time Travis Scott dropped a shoe, 50,000 pairs, 100,000 pairs, doesn't matter. Every single time they sold out. I was lucky once. Once I got a pair. Early on, which was still improbable. But this man revived Nike and their Jordans and their Dunks in so many ways, to the point where now Nike's just making every Dunk color of the week every week, and they're still selling out. That's the effect. The Panda Dunk is the new wave now, apparently. I see them everywhere. A good-looking shoe. But Nike knows when they got a hit. And it was like, okay, he revitalized an interest in sportswear and shoes that extended. I'm like, people aren't playing basketball in these shoes. And it's funny because they mentioned that at one point in the movie. It's like, obviously you got to play basketball in it, but we're looking for something like a Converse that can be worn off the court by the masses, that people will actually wear, not just to hoop in. And so, you've got J Balvin, who's done a couple different Jordan collabs at this point. Laylee May, you've got all sorts of entertainers to various degrees. Drake, tons of Jordans, because he's a Nike guy. You've got, Kanye West did his own brand. He made his own shoes at Nike. I can't put him in that category. But then even over at Adidas, following Kanye West making his own deal, they're like, well, the next best thing we could do is get celebrities to remake some of our old shoes, or to remake, kind of like what they're doing over at Jordan. It's like, hey, yeah, Nike, they're like, hey, we'll let you use this Jordan 2 silhouette. And, you could put some different colors on there. You can do a different tab on the tongue, whatever, just make it fresh, make it unique. So all across the board, Beyonce with Ivy Park, celebrities and shoes have never been more popular than they are right now. And none of that would have happened if it weren't for Michael Jordan and the Air Jordan. None of this would have been possible. So if you're just a fan of the shoes, if you're a fan of the player, if you're a fan of finding out how this all got done, you got to go see Air in theaters. No doubt. It's just so enjoyable, so worthwhile. And it's Easter weekend, what a perfect time to go to the movies. We're going to be together. Go see a movie together. Thanks again for listening, you guys. It's going to be a great 2023. Already started off with a banger. So hopefully next episode we come back with something great as well. Thanks again, guys.